Hello everyone, welcome to our ninth video in the Python for Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning series. This is Dheeraj Chaudhary and today we are exploring for loops, which is one of the most important control structures in programming. Loops allows us to perform repetitive tasks efficiently, which is crucial when working with large datasets common in artificial intelligence and machine learning. By the end of this video, you will understand how to use for loops to iterate through data, process collection of items, and automate repetitive operations. So let's understand what are loops. So loops are control structure that allow code to execute repeatedly again and again. So they are fundamental to programming because they let us automate a repetitive task with minimal coding. Imagine you needing to process thousands of data points and you are writing the individual lines one by one. That would be really impractical. In this kinds of scenarios, you would like to automate that by running a loop. So in Python, there are two main types of loops. One is the for loop, which iterate over sequences like list or ranges, and while loops, which continues as long as condition remains true. In this video, we will focus on for loops specifically, which are particularly useful for data processing, tasks common in AI and ML applications. For loops, let us apply the same operation to each item in a collection, making our code more concise, readable, and maintainable. So let's see the basics of for loop. So Python's for loop has a simple intuitive syntax that you can see in the syntax block over here, where it starts with the keyword for, followed by a variable name that will hold the value of each item during the iteration, then the keyword in, and finally the sequence you want to iterate over. So this would be the sequence. This is how the syntax works. So the loop processes each item in the sequence one by one, executing the intended code block which is inside that for loop. Unlike for loops in some other languages that use counter variables and conditions, Python's for loop is technically a for each loop if you compare that with other languages. It directly iterates over items in a sequence. This makes Python loops more readable and less prone to errors like off by one mistakes that we perform in other languages. So the loop automatically terminates once it has processed the last item in the sequence. So whatever sequence you define over here, it might be a list, it might be a set, or it might be some other data type. If there is a last item that has been processed by the for loop, it will automatically terminate the loop. So now let's understand how different iteration works with different sequences. So common iterables that we should be aware of is list, strings, tuples, dictionaries, sets, files, and custom iterables. So today we will see it one by one. Let me jump to the screen and we will see some loop iterations. First, we will see how using for loop we can iterate through a list element by element. So over here, I have defined a list with three elements, 1, 2, 3. So the index starts with 0. So it would be 0, 1, 2. So these are the indexes for 1, 2, 3 values which are there as part of this list. Now, when I say for item, okay, item is a variable which we are defined over here for item in my list. When we say for item, it will first fetch the first item, that is the first element from the list, and it will check if it is available over here. If it is, then it will go ahead and print that item. So as you can see, there are three elements over here. It will iterate three times and automatically it will terminate. You don't have to write explicitly that it has to be terminated or it has to break, right? So that is the beauty of for loop. Over here, as you saw, it iterated over each element in the list, and this is the output. That shows you that every time you try to iterate, first it will get the first element, then it will see if it exists, and then it is going to go ahead and print it. Now, you can the way we iterated element by element in list, we can do that character by character in string. So when I run for loop in string, it is going to go character by character. The first character is A, second character is I. If I say again XYZ, so it will actually go ahead and print each character because it is going to read them as part of for loop character by character. So if I run this, you can see A, I, XYZ. It ran it one by one and it has been printed, right? Now, when we want to iterate over a tuple, you can do it again in the same way in for loop, where it is going to read the tuple one by one, and as part of the for loop, which will be saved in item, which will be compared with this with in operator, and it will be printed over here. So this is how it is iterated value by value, and you can see the answer is below. Now let's see how the iteration works in dictionary, because dictionary is different. In dictionary you have key value pairs, so in that case things are different. So when I say my dictionary name is John and age is 30, so we have two key value pair as part of this dictionary. So when I run for keyword, so when I run the for loop, when I say for key in my dict, what it is doing is it is just getting the key. Okay, so for key, we are only reading the key as part of the for loop one by one, and once we get the key in this key variable, we go down, we print, and over here we use this statement in bracket key, that is my dict key. By using this we are going to get the values. So that is how what we are going to do is, in the key you will see that the iterator for is going ahead and getting each key one by one, and we are fetching the values based on the keys that we are getting from the for loop, and it is going to be printed likewise. So see, key, this was the key, and the value, this is the value, John. This is how you can use it in a key value pair. Now if you want to loop through a set, again it will go element by element. If I go ahead and print, you will see that it is reading each element by iterating over the set. So this is how the it iterated through the sequences that is available in Python. Now we will talk about the range function and why it's important, because it's memory efficient due to lazy evaluation and useful for indexing. So sampling every nth element or generating IDs. Now let me explain that why. Because the range function is a built-in Python function that creates a sequence of numbers which is commonly used for loops. It's especially useful when you need to run a loop a specific number of times or generate numeric sequences. Range can take 1, 2, or 3 argument. What I mean by that? So over here you can see there are 3 different ways you can define a range. Okay, first you only define it with 1 argument, and it generates number from 0 to the number that you have defined minus 1. So for example, if I say 5 over here, so it is going to print the numbers from 0 to the number that you have defined over here, 5 minus 1. That would be from 0 to 4, because our index starts from 0. That's why. Now let's move to second, where we have 2 arguments over here as part of the range function. So it generates number from first argument, so which is the start point, and ends to the stop point minus 1, as we know, right? So that is how you use 2 arguments as part of the range function. Now when you use 3 arguments, what you can do, you can mention the start point, the end point, and the step. So for example, if I say 1 is the start point, 10 is the stop point, and the step is 2, so what it is going to print is, it is going to start with 1. So the first one would be 1, second one would be 3, third one would be 5. So because I have given a step of 2 numbers, so it is skipping 1 number and directly moving to the second one. That is how you can use with 3 arguments the range function. And in data preprocessing, you might use a range to process every nth item, generate sequence IDs, or implement algorithms that require specific number patterns. That's why it's very important for us to understand this range function. Let's understand this with an example. So as I said, first with 1 argument. So right now I have given the argument as 5. If I run this, it is going to print the numbers from 0 to 4. Because when you use 1 argument, that is the stop point, and by default the start point is considered from 0. Now if we use 2 arguments, where we give the start point as well as end point, that would be 1 to 6 minus 1, it will print the number from 1 to 5. Now when we are going to use 3 arguments, so 0 is going to be my start point, 11 minus 1 is going to be my end point, and 2 is going to be my steps. So it will start printing from 0, and then it will skip 1 number and move towards the next and print that number for us. So if I go ahead and run this, you will see it is just reading the number at the step of 2, and that is all printed over here for you. Now, if you want to count in a backward direction, at that time, what you can do is you can mention uh, in this way, where I have mentioned the start point from behind, that is 10, and I have mentioned the end point from behind, that is 0, and I have mentioned 1, because usually whenever we do it for the other three that we have mentioned over here, we are going from left to right. But when you mention -1, you are coming from right to left. That's why it is going to print the numbers in the opposite way, that is from 10 to 1. Now, let's go ahead and understand the loop control variables. So the loop control variables, sometimes it is also called as the iterator variable, is a key component for loops. It takes the value of each item in the sequence during the iteration. Choosing descriptive values names makes code more readable. For example, if we are working on an example where we are trying to identify the temperature, we can use the temperature while iterating through the temperature readings. And there is also one important function which comes into picture when we are talking about loop control variables, that is the enumerator function, which is particularly useful when you need both the index and the value during the iteration. I will explain you that with an example very soon. So it returns pair of index value that can unpack directly in the loop. One important detail is to note that the loop variable continues to exist after the loop completes uh, then also. So if you want that to be removed, you have to remove it explicitly. Also, it's generally considered bad practice to modify the loop variable inside the loop itself, as it can lead to unexpected behavior. In data science workflows, well-named loop variables helps us understand the code self-documenting when implementing algorithms or transformation. So it's very important for us to give appropriate variable names while we are going to use that in loops. So let's see how we can use control variables in loop. So over here, we are going to identify the temperature is present in our list or not. So what we are identifying the temperature. So this is in this loop, I am also using a conditional statement, that is the if statement. So what this if statement is going to do is it says that from temperature in this. So right now I am not specifying any temperature. So it is going to pick each temperature one by one, right? First it will pick this one, which is at element number 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, one by one. So whenever the iterator is going to pick one value and it will come down with that value and pass it to this temperature, I'm checking whether it is greater than 25 or not. If it is greater than 25, then and only then I am going to go ahead and print a value. So over here you saw the variable that I am creating, how I am controlling the loop by using that variable. So this is the beauty of control variables in loop, where the value that you get from the iterable, you can use it as part of your conditional statement or some other nested loop that you want to perform. So over here, what it will do is, so in first iteration, what it will get, so temperature will become 22.5, then it will come down and it will check 22.5 is greater than 25, false. It is not going to print anything. But whenever the temperature is greater than 25, then and only then it will print. So as per our understanding, if I say 22.5, it is less than 25, this is greater than 25, this is also greater than 25, this is less than 25, and this is less than 25. So as per the conditional statement and the control loop variable that we have used in that conditional statement, it is going to only print the numbers which are temperatures which are greater than 25. So let's go ahead and run this, and you can see it has only printed the value, because after every iteration it went inside this condition, checked whether this temperature is greater than 25 or not. If not, it is not printing. If it is, then and only then it prints. So this is how you can use control variables to control your for loops. Now let's understand another example. So another important example that you will see over here is enumerate for index and value. This is a tricky one, but I will try to simplify it for you guys. So here we start with a list of fruits, which is apple, banana, and cherry. Now we want to go through this list one by one, but also keep track of the position, that is the index of each fruit, which is defined as part of this list. That's where enumerate function comes in. it gives us both the index and the value from the list at the same time. So when I'm going to go ahead and run this loop, you can see that I am defining two variables, index and the fruit, so that the return, it is going to return the index and the value. So we can save them in two different variables and we can go ahead and print them. So index, what is the index? Index is the place where the element is saving the value, and this is the value. So index is going to be this zeroth element, and fruit is going to be the apple. Now what I will go do is I will just go ahead and say that uh, 1 plus 1 to start coming from 1 instead of 0, so the output looks nicer. So what you can do is you can also add plus 1 over here. If I go ahead and run this, you can see it is going ahead and printing it from here. So now if I go ahead and remove this and print it once again, see, it is printing from 0. So by default it is from 0, but sometimes when you don't want to confuse people and you want to avoid showing zeros, at that time you can go ahead and also modify the value of the index by saying plus 1. So it shows in a well formatted way that the first fruit is apple, second fruit is banana, and third fruit is cherry. That is convenient to read. That's why I have added plus 1 over here. But the main agenda of adding an index over here is to show you that how enumerator is returning the index value, also how we can save that index value and we can use it to understand that which element is at which index, means which element value resides at which index. Now let's go ahead and understand loop variable exists after the loop. This is very important. So whenever we define a for loop, what's happening? We say for x in range 5. What is x? X is a variable that we defined as part of this for loop. So this variable immediately gets created over here, and whenever this variable gets created, so it's not going to automatically destroy once your for loop is completed. That's what we are trying to see over here. So now my for loop is going to complete over here. Once my for loop is completed, it will go ahead and print the value. So right now I am not printing any value, but I can print the value too. First, let's see without printing a value. I am using a pass statement that I will explain you in the upcoming videos that how you can use it explicitly. Now, if I go see, the final value is 4. Usually, we can also go ahead and print x over here. Okay. Now, I will just go ahead and run this. See. So after the iteration was finished, the last value inside this x value was 4, and that's what you can see, that the value, the variable is not removed or not deleted, it still exists. So that is the meaning of variable still exists after the loop is being completed. So as a part of loop, we are creating a variable, but it is not going to auto destroy. It is going to be there in the memory itself, and you can, if you want, you can use it, but it is going to have the last value that of the last element which has been iterated, that it has picked. Now let's go ahead and see what's next. So now we're going to talk about nested for loops, which is again one of the main and best functionality of nested for loops, which would be required in real-time examples. So nested for loops are loops inside other loops. So the inner loop completes all its iteration for each single iteration of the outer loop. Sounds confusing? I will try to explain you when we will go to the code. So nested loops are essential for working with multi-dimensional data like matrices or images, which are common in machine learning. For example, to process each pixel in an image, you might use nested loops for rows and columns. And in machine learning, you will encounter nested loops when implementing algorithms like k-means clustering, matrix operations, or when processing batches of training examples with multiple features. So let's understand the first example of nested for loop. So in the first example, you will see we have defined two for loops. Okay. So let's understand this code that actually prints the multiplication table from 1 to 3, where we have defined the range function with the start point 1 and the end point is 4 minus 1. So it will be starting from 1 and ending on 3. Same for the for loop, that is the first for loop, and the nested for loop also we are using the same range function values. Now the outer loop over here, let's call this as outer loop. Okay, outer loop. and let's call this as inner loop. So the outer loop runs through the value 1 to 3 as we saw, and whenever it is going to run from value 1 to 3, every time it iterates, the value of the range that is it is going to pick is going to be saved inside this variable, that is I. Once that value is picked, for each I variable, it is going to be passed to the nested for loop. So in nested for loop, what happens? For each I, the inner loop runs 3 times. So this runs 1 time and this will run 3 times. This runs second time again, this will run 3 times. Let me try to show. I will try to run it again and show you. So first for loop executed. Okay, in this you can see it got the value of 1. Once we got I as 1, then it went inside this loop, and then it says for j in range of 1 to 3. Now it is going through this iteration where it will run from 1 to 3. So this is the I value. So I is 1, then it iterates for the nested loop for 1, 2 and 3. That is why you see 3 and 3. That means the value comes once from the outer loop and it has been iterated 3 times inside the inner loop. That's why you get 1 into 1, 1 into 2 and 1 into 3. Then again, when I get then once it is completed, it goes to the outer loop. Once it comes to outer loop again, then for the second iteration, it is going to get the value of 2. That's why 2 is over here. And then it goes inside, then it runs for 3 times. That is 2 into 1, 2 into 2 and 2 into 3. That's where you see 3 values. Then it goes back again to the outer loop, picks the value, that is the third value, and then come inside the nested for loop, that is the inner loop, and again runs 3 times. This is how nested for loop works. Now let's see this in a matrix format, that when you are going to use a matrix, usually when we use a matrix, so this is going to be our first row, this is going to be a second row, this is going to be our third row. Consider that. So I am defining a matrix over here, which is having 3 lists as mentioned over here. So each element is a list, and that is having 2 elements inside that. So now to get the values inside the list of a list, it will be important for us to use nested for loops or nested loops to get the value. So what I'm going to do is over here is first I am defining our outer loop. This is going to be our outer loop, and this is going to be our inner loop. So how it should work now? First, it says for row in matrix. So this, as I said, this is our row number 1, this is our row number 2, and this is our row number 3. So we are going to print the matrix row by row. That's why the outer loop says for row in matrix. That means for row, first it is going to pick the row number 1, that is on the index of 0. Once it is picked, then we go to the inner loop where it is going to iterate over the list which has been passed to this variable. So this variable has been returned with the list. Then this item keyword is going to iterate through the items inside the list, and it is going to print them with a space. So I have mentioned a space over here. So first it will pick row number 1, then it is going to go ahead and give it to this. It is going to iterate through the items inside the list, and it is going to print it one by one. So if I go ahead and run it, as you saw, first what happened, it in the outer loop, it is going to go ahead and read the first list. Once it is read, it is given back to our variable, it is saved in row. Then we come inside another for loop, that is the inner loop, and we iterate through the elements inside that list, which is now as part of the variable row, and we go ahead and print them. So over here we are printing them one by one with a space at the end. That is how you can use the nested for loops in another way. You can also use it when you have multiple lists that you have to process. So over here what I'm doing is we are going ahead and processing multiple lists. So in this scenario, what we have 2 lists over here, colors and shape, and both are having 2 values inside each list. So when we start our outer loop, and this is our inner loop. So first, for loop is going to go ahead and get the first element of colors, that is a list. So it is going to go ahead and get red over here. Once we get the value of red, then we go ahead and say for shape in shapes, okay, we are going to go ahead and pick the first one, that is the shapes. Now we are not so we are actually running two lists parallelly and fetching the value, and we are printing the data together. So first we are getting the value of colors, then we are getting the value of shape, and then we are printing it together like this. So it says red circle, then blue square, right? Red circle, then blue square. So now if I do it in one loop, it will print red and circle, blue and square. But actually I want to use the combination of red with both the shapes, that is circle and square, blue with both the shapes, that is circle and square. That's why we have used inner loop. So what inner loop does is, first time it is going to get the value of red, okay? Once the value of red is available over here in color, we are going to go ahead and run for shape in shapes. So what it does is, it is going to get both the values one by one, that is circle and square, and it is going to iterate two times. Once we get the red, it iterates two times, so it becomes red circle, red square. Second time when it iterates, it gets the value blue for the outer loop, and the inner loop iterates two times, so it says blue circle and blue square. Now let's go back to our slide. That is how nested for loop works. So let's talk about the official Python documentation that we have. So this is the official Python documentation that you can find over here. I will put the link in the description below. So this is the document which talks about how for statements work and the range function that we just explored. So you can go ahead and refer the documentation from here. So thanks everyone for your time and participation. I encourage you to experiment with the concepts we discussed today. If you have any questions or thought, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. Remember, programming skill improves with practice. So try to apply these concepts in different contexts to solidify your understanding. Join our WhatsApp community, subscribe to our AIML YouTube channel, and sign up for the Tech Inside Neuron newsletter. All the links are available in the description below, as well as you can see them in the QR code on the screen. So see you in the next video. Take care and bye for now.